ultimate question, all right? Picture this with me for a second. I want you to close your eyes, or maybe just unfocus your gaze for a moment and really engage in a little thought experiment. Let's say you've got a blank slate. Total reset button on human history. No established laws, no pre-existing governments, no centuries of tradition weighing down on us. Just you, maybe a few hundred or a few thousand other people, and a brand new world ripe for building from the ground up. My question to you right off the bat is that if you were tasked with building a society completely from scratch, from zero, what is the *1 fundamental rule, the absolute non-negotiable principle that everyone in your brand new society must follow? Just one. Think about it. What would be the very first brick in your societal foundation? It's a surprisingly hard question, isn't it? I mean, immediately my mind races. Is it don't harm others, or respect property? Maybe treat others as you'd like to be treated? Or perhaps something simpler, more fundamental, like cooperate to survive. It forces you to confront what you genuinely believe is the most essential ingredient for a livable, sustainable, and *free community. What do you prioritize above all else when you're starting from nothing? What's the bedrock of any functioning human collective? Now, let's take that thought experiment a step further. Once you've got your rule, or maybe you've been pragmatic and allowed yourself a handful of core principles, how do you ensure everyone actually follows them? Who decides what happens if someone breaks that sacred rule? Who arbitrates disputes? Who protects the weak from the strong? This quickly leads us to the heart of something we all grapple with, whether we realize it in our daily lives or not: the very nature of government itself. And that brings us to a monumental dilemma, a question that has haunted philosophers, shaped nations, and sparked revolutions for millennia. Is government, at its core, a necessary protector? Is it the indispensable shield that keeps us safe from chaos, from anarchy, from the predatory impulses of others, and from external threats? Is it the very thing that enables our freedom by providing order and justice? Or is government, perhaps, a potential threat to your own individual freedom? A leviathan that, once given power, could expand its reach, curtail your choices, dictate your life, and ultimately take away the very liberties it claims to secure. I feel this tension almost every day, don't you? We rely on government for so much: the roads we drive on, the police that keep our streets safe, the hospitals, the schools. We expect it to protect our rights and provide a stable framework for our lives. But at the same time, we often eye it with suspicion. We worry about overreach, about intrusive laws, about our taxes, about decisions being made far away that profoundly impact our personal autonomy. We feel that constant push and pull, that delicate dance between the need for order and the yearning for individual liberty. Where do you draw the line? Where should the line be drawn? Is there even a definitive line? These aren't new questions. Not by a long shot. Humanity has been wrestling with this fundamental tension, this push and pull between freedom and control, for as long as we've organized ourselves into groups. But over 300 years ago, during a time of immense political upheaval and intellectual ferment in England, a pivotal figure emerged. One incredibly influential English philosopher, John Locke, essentially sat down and articulated what many consider to be the foundational blueprint for freedom as we understand it in the Western world. His work, his masterpiece, known as the Second Treatise of Government, isn't just a dusty old book sitting on a shelf in a university library. Oh no, this is a living document. It's a text that provided the intellectual ammunition for revolutions. Yes, the American Revolution, for one, inspired declarations of independence across the globe and continues to echo in our political discourse, our debates, and our understanding of fundamental human rights today. It is, quite simply, one of the most important philosophical texts ever written on the nature of government and the rights of the individual. And that, my friends, is precisely what we're here to do today. We're going to dive deep into Locke's mind. We're going to explore his radical, game-changing ideas about where legitimate government authority comes from, what rights we possess just by being human, and when, if ever, it's justifiable to rebel against the state. We're going to dissect this blueprint for freedom, chapter by chapter, concept by concept. And honestly, we're going to put it to the test. We're going to ask, does this 300-year-old framework still hold up in our incredibly complex, interconnected, and rapidly changing modern world? Does it still provide the answers we need for the challenges of freedom and control today? Can it still help us navigate that tricky, eternal balance between government as a necessary protector and government as a potential threat to our most cherished liberties? I have a feeling you'll be surprised by just how relevant and sometimes how challenging Locke's arguments remain. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's embark on this journey into the mind of one of history's most impactful thinkers. Why a 300-year-old book is your modern user manual for freedom. Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive into a book that, on the surface, might look like just another dusty relic from a forgotten era. But trust me, you're about to discover why John Locke's Second Treatise of Government isn't just history, it's practically your modern user manual for freedom. Think about it for a second. We talk a lot today about rights, about responsibilities, about what governments should and shouldn't do. We debate privacy, surveillance, what constitutes legitimate power, and when it's okay to push back. These aren't new questions, not by a long shot. In fact, many of the very foundations of these conversations were laid out centuries ago by a thinker so revolutionary, so profoundly impactful, that his ideas still echo in our constitutions, our laws, and our everyday understanding of what it means to be free. I'm talking about John Locke. Now, when you hear 17th century philosopher, you might picture someone in a powdered wig, droning on about obscure theories. But Locke, he wasn't just an old philosopher, he was a radical, an intellectual insurgent whose thoughts helped spark revolutions and reshape the very concept of human governance. He was living in a world where kings claimed absolute power, often citing divine right, the idea that their authority came directly from God, making them unquestionable. Ordinary people had few rights, if any, that couldn't be revoked by a monarch's whim. It was a time of immense political upheaval, of civil wars, and of a desperate search for a more just and stable way to organize society. And it was in this crucible that Locke forged his masterpiece, the Second Treatise of Government. This wasn't some abstract academic exercise, it was a direct challenge to the status quo, a foundational text arguing for something incredibly audacious at the time, that individuals have inherent rights, that governments derive their legitimate power from the consent of the governed, and that there are clear limits to what any ruler can do. It's a book that, without exaggeration, helped lay the groundwork for modern democracy, for the American Revolution, and for the very idea that you and I have fundamental, inalienable rights just by being human. So, why are we diving into a 300-year-old book today? Because I truly believe this isn't a history lesson you simply learn. It's a living document, a toolkit for citizenship in the 21st century. My goal here isn't to just tell you what Locke said. It's to decode his arguments, to translate his dense prose into concepts we can apply to our own lives, our own political landscape, and our own understanding of freedom right now. We'll explore questions like, what exactly are our natural rights? How do we balance individual liberty with the needs of society? When is government legitimate, and when does it overstep its bounds? What does it mean to have consent of the governed in an age of digital referendums and online activism? And, critically, what are our responsibilities as citizens in upholding these principles? This book, the second Treatise, is more than just required reading for political science majors. It's a foundational text that provides the language and the framework for understanding our place in the world, our relationship with power, and our ongoing pursuit of a free and just society. It's about empowering you with the critical thinking skills to analyze the world around you, to question authority wisely, and to participate meaningfully in shaping your own future. So get ready to challenge some assumptions, to trace the lineage of ideas that shape your everyday life, and to discover why a book written centuries ago can be the most relevant guide you pick up this year. Let's unlock the wisdom of John Locke together. Chapter 1. The State of Nature, Life Before Government. All right, let's dive right into this, shall we? Welcome back, my friends, to Thinking with Locke, the podcast where we unpack the wisdom and sometimes the quirks of John Locke's second treatise of government. I'm your host, and I'm genuinely excited to jump into Chapter 1 today because it's where Locke lays the absolute foundation for everything that follows. We're talking about his concept of the state of nature, life before government. Now, before we even get started, I want you to clear your mind of any preconceived notions you might have about this phrase, state of nature. Because, for many of us, if you've heard it before, it probably brings up images of chaos, brutality, a kind of every man for himself, dog-eat-dog world. And while that's certainly one famous philosopher's take, we'll get to him in a minute, Locke's vision is remarkably different, and I find it quite optimistic, actually. Locke wants us to imagine a time, a theoretical condition, where there is no established government, no civil authority, no police force, no judges, no shared laws enforced by a collective power. It's not necessarily a historical period he's talking about, but more of a thought experiment to understand what humans are like at their most fundamental . And what he posits is this: in the state of nature, all men are in a state of perfect freedom and equality . Let that sink in for a moment. Perfect freedom and equality. What does that actually mean? For Locke, perfect freedom means that every individual is free to order their actions and dispose of their possessions and persons as they think fit. Crucially, they do this within the bounds of the law of nature. So it's not a free-for-all, not a license to do absolutely anything you want without consequence. There's a vital caveat built right in. And this idea of equality, it means that no one has naturally more power or jurisdiction over another. We are all born with the same natural rights, the same faculties, the same capabilities for reason. It's a mutual equality where all power and jurisdiction is reciprocal. No one is naturally superior, entitled to rule over another, just by virtue of their birth or some divine right. This was a radical idea for his time, pushing back against monarchical claims of absolute power derived from God. So, already we're seeing a picture emerge that's far from the primitive, bloody landscape some might expect. Locke's state of nature is characterized by individuals who are free, equal, and, most importantly, rational. And this rationality is key because it leads us directly to the law of nature. This law of nature is, for Locke, something discoverable by reason. It's not written on tablets, it's not handed down by a king, it's something we as rational beings can deduce. And what does this law of nature dictate? It dictates that no one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. Think about that. Before any human-made laws, before any government, Locke believes we inherently understand that we shouldn't injure each other. Why? Because we are all the workmanship of one omnipotent and infinitely wise Maker. We are all his property, sent into the world by his order, and therefore we have an obligation to preserve ourselves, and when our own preservation comes not in competition, to preserve the rest of mankind as much as we can. It's a profoundly moral framework derived from reason and a belief in a rational creator. This inherent understanding means that in the state of nature, even without a governing authority, there's a moral compass. You can't just take someone's property or enslave them or kill them without violating this fundamental law. And if someone does violate it, well, here's where things get interesting. Everyone, as an equal in the state of nature, has the right to execute the law of nature. They have the right to punish transgressors, but only to the extent that it serves as reparation and restraint to prevent further offenses. It's not a license for unlimited revenge, but a measured response to uphold the common good and the natural order. Now, I mentioned earlier that many people have a different image of the state of nature, and that image largely comes from another immensely influential philosopher, Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes, writing earlier than Locke, famously described the state of nature as a war of all against all, a brutal condition where life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. For Hobbes, without a strong, absolute sovereign to impose order, human beings would inevitably descend into constant conflict, driven by self-interest and a perpetual fear of death. Locke explicitly pushes back against this bleak view. He dedicates a good chunk of this chapter to clarifying that the state of nature is not a state of war. A state of war, for Locke, only arises when someone declares, "I am going to violate the law of nature against you." When someone attempts to put another person into absolute power or threatens their life, health, liberty, or possessions, when a state of war begins. The state of nature, by default, is peaceful and governed by reason. It's only the transgression of the law of nature that introduces war. I find this distinction incredibly important because it reveals a fundamental difference in their views of human nature. Hobbes sees us as inherently self-serving and destructive without external control. Locke, on the other hand, sees us as inherently rational and capable of moral understanding, even without a government telling us what to do. We are born with reason and conscience. This more optimistic view is foundational to Locke's arguments for limited government and individual rights. If we are capable of rational self-governance in the state of nature, then any government we establish needs to respect and protect those inherent capacities and rights. So, to recap, Locke's state of nature isn't a chaotic free-for-all. It's a state of perfect freedom and equality where individuals are bound by the law of nature, which is discoverable by reason. This law dictates that no one should harm another in their life, health, liberty, or possessions, and everyone has the right to enforce this law. It's a far cry from Hobbes's brutal war of all against all. This chapter really sets the stage for everything we'll discuss next. It makes you think, doesn't it? What would life truly be like if we only had our reason and this inherent law to guide us? What are the practical implications of everyone being an executor of the law? We're going to explore those questions, those inconveniences that eventually lead people to form governments in our next chapter. But for now, I encourage you to ponder Locke's vision. Does it resonate with your own understanding of human nature? Does it feel idealistic or fundamentally true? These are the kinds of questions that make reading Locke so rewarding. Thanks for joining me today on Thinking with Locke *. We'll be diving deeper into the nuances and implications of this state of nature very soon. Until then, keep thinking, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time. Chapter 2. The Law of Nature, the Universe's Moral Compass. All right, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here with me again as we continue our deep dive into John Locke's second treatise of government. Last time, we explored the fascinating concept of the state of nature, that imagined pre-political state where humans existed without government. And we established that, for Locke, it wasn't a free-for-all, a war of all against all, but actually a state of liberty, not license. And the reason for that crucial distinction, that key difference, brings us directly into today's discussion. Chapter 2, The Law of Nature, the Universe's Moral Compass. This is where things get really profound, in my opinion, because Locke introduces a concept that underpins everything else he talks about. He argues that even in that state of nature, where there's no king, no parliament, no police, humanity isn't just floundering in moral chaos. Why? Because we are all governed by something he calls the law of nature. Now, when you hear law of nature, you might immediately think of, like, gravity, or the laws of physics, or maybe even something divinely ordained, like the Ten Commandments. But Locke's interpretation is both simpler and, in some ways, more revolutionary. He's not talking about something written down in a sacred text or etched onto stone tablets. This law isn't codified anywhere you can physically point to. Instead, it's something much more fundamental. It's discoverable by reason. It's innate to us as human beings. Think about that for a second. Locke is essentially saying that embedded within our very capacity for rational thought is the ability to understand right from wrong, good from bad, justice from injustice. It's a moral compass that comes pre-installed, not by some earthly authority, but by virtue of our shared humanity and our capacity to reason. We don't need a king to tell us murder is wrong. Our reason tells us that. We don't need a church to dictate that preserving human life is good. Our reason can grasp that. This law of nature, according to Locke, teaches us that no one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. Why? Because we are all equal and independent. We are all the workmanship of one omnipotent and infinitely wise maker. And because we are all equally God's property, we have a duty to preserve ourselves and, as much as possible, to preserve the rest of mankind. This is the bedrock. This is the absolute foundation. It's not just about individual survival, it's about the preservation of humanity as a whole. And reason, our rational minds, allows us to deduce this. I find this concept incredibly powerful because it shifts the source of morality and rights away from monarchy, away from specific religious doctrine, and places it squarely within human reason itself. It suggests a universal moral framework accessible to everyone, regardless of their cultural background or belief system, as long as they can reason. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and perhaps a little bit radical for some. If this law of nature exists, and if everyone can discover it through their own reason, then who enforces it? In the absence of a government, in the state of nature, if someone violates this law of nature, if they unjustly harm another or steal their property, who is responsible for meting out justice? Locke's answer is striking. Everyone has the right to enforce the law of nature. Yes, everyone, each individual in the state of nature possesses what he calls the executive power of the law of nature. This means that if someone wrongs you, or even wrongs another person in front of you, you have a right, and perhaps even a duty, to punish the offender. Now, this isn't an invitation to vigilante justice in the modern sense of chaos and revenge. Locke is very clear that this right to punish is not absolute, and it's not about personal retribution. It's about protecting the innocent and restraining offenders for the common good. The punishment must be proportionate to the offense. It should serve two main purposes: reparation, making amends for the harm done, and restraint, deterring the offender and others from committing similar offenses in the future. The idea is to make the punishment just such as may serve for reparation and restraint. This is a critical point that helps us understand why people eventually agree to form governments. While everyone has the right to enforce the law of nature, Locke acknowledges the inherent problems with this system. Individuals are often biased. They're not impartial judges in their own case, or even in the case of their friends. Emotions can run high. What seems like a proportionate punishment to the victim might seem excessive to the perpetrator, leading to escalating cycles of conflict. So, while the right to enforce exists for the common good, it's precisely its imperfect application that eventually necessitates a neutral third party, government, to judge disputes and enforce laws fairly. But before we get too far into government, let's connect this incredible Lockean idea to something much more contemporary: the modern concept of universal human rights. Think about it. Locke's law of nature, discoverable by reason, asserting fundamental rights to life, liberty, and property simply because we are human, sounds remarkably like the philosophical underpinning of documents like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The idea that there are certain rights that belong to all people everywhere simply by virtue of their humanity, rights that no government can legitimately take away. That's pure Locke. It's the direct descendant of his law of nature. When we talk about natural rights today, even if we don't explicitly mention Locke, we're invoking his legacy. We're saying that there's a moral standard, a set of principles that transcends national borders, cultural differences, and specific laws. It's an inherent dignity and set of entitlements that we recognize through our shared reason and empathy. For me, this is perhaps the most enduring and impactful aspect of Locke's philosophy from this chapter. He laid the groundwork for the idea that human rights aren't granted by kings or parliaments, or even by God in an exclusive, revelatory way. They are inherent, they are rational, they are universal, and our ability to reason allows us to understand them, to respect them, and to demand them. So, when we move forward, keep this law of nature in mind. It's not just a quaint philosophical concept from centuries ago. It's the very bedrock upon which our modern understanding of justice, morality, and individual liberty is built. It's the universe's moral compass that guides us even when there's no earthly authority telling us what to do. It's an incredibly optimistic view of human nature, isn't it? That we are, by our very design, capable of understanding and adhering to a fundamental moral code. But it also introduces the tension that will drive the rest of Locke's argument. If this law of nature is so perfect, why do we need government at all? And that, my friends, is exactly what we'll begin to explore in our next chapter. Thank you so much for joining me again. I hope this discussion has given you a new perspective on Locke's powerful ideas. Make sure to tune in next time as we begin to see how this beautiful, yet imperfect, state of nature eventually leads us to the social contract. Until then, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep exploring. Chapter 3. The Inconvenience of Paradise: Why We Need Rules. All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. So glad you're here with me again as we continue our deep dive into John Locke's second treatise of government. Last time, we talked about the state of nature, this fascinating concept of humanity existing without government, governed only by natural law. We explored how it's not necessarily a war of all against all, like Hobbes envisioned, but a state of perfect freedom and equality. Sounds pretty good, right? A paradise even. No bosses, no taxes, no one telling you what to do. You're your own boss, your own judge, your own everything. But here's the thing about paradise: sometimes it's just not that convenient. And that, my friends, brings us directly to chapter 3 of Locke's treatise, which I've aptly, I hope, titled for our purposes, The Inconvenience of Paradise: Why We Need Rules. Because if the state of nature is so free, so equal, so natural, why would anyone ever want to leave it? Why would people willingly give up some of that perfect freedom to form a society, to submit to a government, to be subject to laws? Locke, ever the pragmatist, tells us exactly why. It's not because the state of nature is inherently evil or oppressive, but because it's full of these nagging, persistent, human-scale problems that make life, well, inconvenient, and often downright dangerous. Locke lays out 3 major wants or inconveniences that plague the state of nature, and they all stem from a fundamental truth about us humans. We're fallible, we're biased, and we're driven by our passions. First up, the big one in the state of nature, there's a lack of an established, settled, known law. Now, wait a minute, you might say. Locke told us their is a natural law, discoverable by reason. And you'd be right. But here's the rub: even if natural law exists, even if it's based on reason, it's not written down in a universally agreed upon book. It's not codified. Everyone, in this state of perfect freedom, is left to interpret it for themselves. Think about it like this: imagine playing a game, any game, but there's no official rule book. Everyone knows the spirit of the game, maybe, but when a dispute arises, did that count as a point? Was that a foul? Everyone has their own interpretation. And guess whose interpretation always seems to favor them? Exactly. My understanding of natural law might say I have a right to this plot of land, but your understanding might say you do. My interpretation of what constitutes a just punishment for a transgression against me might be wildly different from yours. Without a common, agreed-upon standard, without a judge, without any form of definitive interpretation, how do you resolve these disagreements? You don't. Or rather, you do through conflict, through force, through might, which inevitably escalates. The law of nature is there, but it's often obscure, difficult to apply, and, crucially, open to individual, self-serving interpretations. Fundamental truth about us humans: we're fallible, we're biased, and we're driven by our passions. First up, the big one in the state of nature, there's a lack of an established, settled, known law. Now wait a minute, you might say, Locke just told us there is a natural law discoverable by reason, and you'd be right. But here's the rub: even if natural law exists, even if it's based on reason, it's not written down in a universally agreed upon book. It's not codified. Everyone in this state of perfect freedom is left to interpret it for themselves. Think about it like this: imagine playing a game, any game, but there's no official rule book. Everyone knows the spirit of the game maybe, but when a dispute arises, did that count as a point? Was that a foul? Everyone has their own interpretation. And guess whose interpretation always seems to favor them? Exactly. My understanding of natural law might say, I have a right to this plot of land, but your understanding might say, you do. My interpretation of what constitutes a just punishment for a transgression against me might be wildly different from yours. Without a common, agreed-upon standard, without a judge, without any form of definitive interpretation, how do you resolve these disagreements? You don't. Or rather, you do, through conflict, through force, through might, which inevitably escalates. The law of nature is there, but it's often obscure, difficult to apply, and, crucially, open to individual, self-serving interpretations. This leads us directly to the second, and arguably most critical, inconvenience: the lack of a known and a different judge. This is where our inherent human flaws really come into play. Locke notes that in the state of nature, every person is both judge and executioner in their own case. And let's be real here, when was the last time you were an impartial judge in your own case? Never, right? And neither have I. We are, by our very nature, biased. We are partial to ourselves, to our friends, to our family. If someone wrongs us, our immediate emotional response isn't detached logic, it's often anger, indignation, a desire for redress, or even revenge. Locke puts it eloquently: self-love will make men partial to themselves and their friends, and on the other side, ill will, passion, and revenge will carry them too far in punishing others. Think about it. You get into a minor fender bender. Who do you think is at fault? Probably the other driver. Even if you made a mistake, your brain will rationalize it, minimize it. Now, imagine there's no police, no insurance, no courts. Just you and the other person. You believe they owe you damages. They believe you owe them. Both of you, driven by self-interest and a bit of ego, are absolutely convinced you're right. How do you resolve this without an impartial third party? You can't. One side will feel unjustly treated, leading to resentment, escalation, and a cycle of retaliation. The state of nature, in this sense, becomes a hotbed for feuds, vendettas, and perpetual insecurity because every minor dispute can spiral out of control due to the complete absence of impartiality. Our passions run wild, unchecked by an objective arbiter. And that brings us to the third, final, but equally crucial inconvenience, even if, by some miracle, you manage to come to a just and rational judgment in a dispute. There's a lack of power to back and support the sentence when right, and to give it due execution. So, let's say you're wronged. You, acting as judge in your own case, objectively determine that the person who stole your berries owes you 3 times the value of those berries as restitution. A perfectly just ruling by your estimation. But what if the berry thief just shrugs and walks away? What if they refuse to pay? What if they're bigger and stronger than you? What then? In the state of nature, there's no police force, no army, no judicial system to enforce rulings. You might have the right of it, you might be entirely justified, but if you lack the power to enforce that judgment, it means absolutely nothing. Your rights become theoretical, not practical. You're left with the option of either letting it go, which feels unjust, or trying to enforce it yourself, which, again, puts you back into a potentially dangerous conflict situation. This constant threat of non-compliance, of justified rulings going unheeded, means that justice, even when theoretically arrived at, can rarely be practically achieved or secured. It creates a state where life is full of fears and continual dangers, as Locke puts it. Your property, your person, your very life are always vulnerable. So when we look at these 3 inconveniences, the lack of a clear, established law, the lack of an impartial judge to interpret that law, and the lack of an enforcing power to carry out just sentences, it becomes abundantly clear that while the state of nature offers perfect freedom, it utterly fails to offer security or stable justice. It's a paradise, yes, but one where you're constantly looking over your shoulder, where every disagreement could become a deadly confrontation, and where justice is a fleeting, unreliable concept. This is the critical turning point in Locke's argument. These aren't minor glitches in the system, they are fundamental flaws inherent in human nature and the absence of external structures. These inconveniences are so significant, so disruptive to a peaceful and orderly existence, that they provide the ultimate motivation for rational individuals to willingly leave the state of nature. They don't leave because it's inherently evil, but because it's impractical, unstable, and ultimately deeply inconvenient. And what do they leave it for? They leave it to form a society, to create a government, and to establish institutions that can remedy these 3 critical wants. They leave it for something that can provide established laws, impartial judges, and the power to enforce those judgments. They leave it for the security and convenience that only a structured society can offer. This, my friends, is the foundational reasoning behind the social contract. It's not about being forced into submission, but about making a rational, self-interested choice to trade a bit of absolute, precarious freedom for the immense benefits of living in a civil society. It's about recognizing that sometimes the inconvenience of paradise is just too much to bear. Next time, we're going to dive headfirst into that solution, the social contract itself. We'll explore how individuals consent to form a community and what that truly means for their rights and their responsibilities. So, get ready to talk about consent, majority rule, and the very foundations of legitimate government. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this has given you a clearer picture of why Locke believes we need rules and why society isn't just some arbitrary imposition, but a necessary and rational choice. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and I'll talk to you soon. Chapter 4. The line we never cross on slavery. All right. Welcome back to Unlocking Locke our journey through John Locke's second treatise of government *. Today, we're diving into Chapter 4, a chapter that, on the surface, might seem a bit jarring, a bit uncomfortable, but it is absolutely foundational to understanding everything else Locke builds. We're talking about slavery, and Locke calls this chapter of slavery, but really it's the line we never cross. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Slavery? Locke, wasn't he complicit in some of that? And yes, that's a fair and complex historical point we absolutely need to acknowledge. But what we're doing here is analyzing his text his philosophical argument and when we look at his words, especially in this chapter, we find something truly radical for his time, something that directly contradicts the very systems he might have, in other capacities, benefited from or been a part of. It's a tension we have to hold. So, let's get into the text. Locke's argument against absolute power, against tyranny, culminates here in his strong condemnation of slavery. He defines slavery not as just an unfortunate condition, but as an extension of the state of war a profound violation of the law of nature. Think back to our discussion of the state of nature and the state of war. Remember, the state of war is characterized by force without right, by one person attempting to exert absolute power over another, threatening their life. Well, for Locke, slavery is that state of war continued. It's the condition of being subject to the arbitrary absolute power of another. And this brings us to Locke's definition of freedom. This is key. For Locke, freedom isn't just doing what you want. It's far more precise. It means not being subject to the arbitrary will of another person *. It means not being under the absolute, uncontrollable power of someone else. You are free when you are subject only to the law of nature, and later, to laws made by a legitimate government that you have consented to. But critically, you are never free if your very life and liberty are at the whim of another individual. That's the antithesis of freedom. And here's where Locke makes a really profound and, again, radical statement for his era. You cannot, under any circumstances, sell yourself into slavery *. Why not? Because you do not have absolute power over your own life. This might sound counterintuitive at first. Wait, I own myself, don't I? My life is mine. And yes, in a sense it is, but not in an absolute sense, according to Locke. Remember the law of nature? We are all God's creation, his property. We don't have the right to destroy ourselves. Suicide, in Locke's view, is a violation of the law of nature because you don't have absolute dominion over your own life. It's on loan, so to speak. If you don't have absolute power over your own life, then you certainly can't transfer that absolute power to someone else. You can't give away something you don't fully possess. So, the idea of a legitimate contract to become someone's absolute property, to enter into perpetual, arbitrary servitude is philosophically impossible and morally illegitimate for Locke. It's a non-starter. Any such agreement would be null and void from the outset because it violates a fundamental law of existence. So, if slavery isn't something you can contract into, where does it come from? Locke offers a very narrow and specific scenario. The only legitimate basis for any form of slavery is when a person has forfeited their life through aggression by putting themselves in a state of war with another. Imagine someone unjustly attacks you, tries to take your life. In that state of war, you have a right to defend yourself, even to the point of taking their life. Locke argues that, in such a situation, the aggressor has forfeited their right to life, and the injured party could instead of killing them, choose to enslave them. They could make use of him to their own benefit by holding them in servitude. But here's the crucial caveat, and this is where Locke really draws the line we never cross. This servitude is not absolute power. If the master's power becomes absolute and arbitrary, if they threaten the life or fundamental well-being of the enslaved person, then it reverts back to a state of war. The enslaved person, even in this condition, retains the right to resist, to fight for their freedom, because no one can legitimately hold arbitrary power over another. They still have their fundamental right to life, even if they forfeited their claim to freedom through aggression. The minute their master tries to exercise absolute, destructive power, the enslaved person is back in the state of war, and they have a right to defend themselves. Now, this brings us to a really important, if historically complex, distinction Locke makes between what he calls legitimate servitude and illegitimate slavery. Legitimate servitude, for Locke, is something like indentured servitude. It's a contractual agreement where a person, perhaps in dire economic straits, sells their labor for a specific period of time, for a specific purpose, in exchange for sustenance, passage, or payment. But crucially, in this arrangement, they still retain their fundamental rights as human beings. They are not under the arbitrary will of the master. They have rights to their life, their body, and eventually, to their freedom once the term of the contract is up. It's a temporary selling of labor not a selling of one's self or one's absolute existence . This is a consensual, time-limited agreement, and it is not what Locke means by slavery. The illegitimate slavery on the other hand, is the condition Locke so forcefully condemns. It's when one person is under the arbitrary and absolute power of another. Their life, their body, their labor, their very being is at the whim of the master. They have no rights, no property, no recourse. This is what Locke considers a state of war continued and a fundamental violation of the law of nature. It's unjust because no one can legitimately hold such power, and no one can legitimately give it away. You see, Locke's argument here, stripped of the historical context of his own time, is incredibly powerful. He's saying that the moment any power becomes absolute and arbitrary whether it's a king over his subjects or a master over an enslaved person, it immediately creates a state of war. And in a state of war, anyone has the right to resist, to defend their life and liberty. This is the intellectual ammunition that would later be used by abolitionists, by revolutionaries challenging tyrannical governments, and by thinkers advocating for universal human rights. It's easy for us, looking back, to point to Locke's own entanglements with colonial ventures and the slave trade, and indeed, we must acknowledge that hypocrisy. His personal actions and investments were clearly at odds with the profound philosophical principles he articulated. But it's also crucial to understand the power of these ideas in themselves. He laid down a philosophical framework that made absolute slavery fundamentally illegitimate. He provided the intellectual tools that would eventually dismantle the very institutions he was, in some ways, a part of. This chapter of slavery isn't just about a historical institution. It's about the very nature of legitimate power. It's about defining the absolute limits of what one human being can do to another. It's Locke saying that if power is absolute and arbitrary, it is not legitimate power at all, it is tyranny, and it justifies resistance. And that, my friends, is a line Locke says we never ever cross. Join us next time as we move into Chapter 5, where Locke introduces another immensely important concept: property. You won't want to miss it. Chapter 5, You Are What You Own, the Theory of Property. All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. We are diving deep into John Locke's second treatise of government and today we're hitting a chapter that is absolutely pivotal, not just for understanding Locke, but for understanding so much of our modern world. We're talking about Chapter 5 of Property, and I've titled our discussion for today, You Are What You Own, the Theory of Property, because that really encapsulates the essence of what Locke is getting at here. Now, before Locke, the idea of property was often tied to tradition, to inherited status, or to a grant from a monarch or the church. It wasn't something that was seen as naturally arising from the individual. But Locke, as he often does, turns things on their head, and he gives us a theory of property that starts with you, with me, with every single individual. And it's truly groundbreaking. So, where does he begin? He begins with the most fundamental, undeniable truth, in his view, and one that, once he articulates it, feels incredibly intuitive, that every individual has a property in his own person. Now, let's unpack that for a moment. What does it mean to have a property in your own person? It means you own yourself. Your body, your mind, your thoughts, your actions, these are yours and yours alone. This is not a concept we should take for granted, because for much of human history, the idea of self-ownership, of individual autonomy over one's own body, was far from universal. Think about serfdom, slavery, or even just the notion that a monarch had divine right over your very existence. Locke is saying no, fundamentally, irrevocably, you own you. This is the absolute first property, the foundation upon which all other property rights are built. And this is a powerful idea, isn't it? If you own your own person, then it logically follows that you also own what your person does. What your hands do, what your mind conceives, the effort you put forth, that's your labor. Your labor is an extension of your body, an extension of yourself. It's what you generate. And if you own your body and you own what your body does, then you own your labor. That's the critical link. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and where Locke introduces the truly revolutionary concept of how property is actually acquired in the first place, how things that were once common to all can become yours. He calls it mixing labor. The idea is this: when you apply your labor, that extension of yourself, to something in nature, something that was previously unowned, something in the common stock of humanity, you thereby take it out of the state of commonality and make it your own. You mix your labor with it, as he says, and by doing so, you infuse it with a part of yourself, making it your property. Let me give you the classic, most straightforward example, the one Locke himself uses, because it's so beautifully simple and illustrative. Picking an apple from a tree in the wild. Imagine you're walking through a vast, untamed forest. There are apple trees growing everywhere, wild apples, just waiting. These trees, these apples, they belong to everyone and no one simultaneously. They are part of the common bounty of nature. No one has claimed them yet. You're hungry. You see a ripe, red apple hanging from a branch. You walk over to the tree, you extend your arm, your fingers grasp the apple, and you pluck it from the branch. Now, at that precise moment, what has happened? You, an individual who owns your own person and therefore your own labor, have applied your labor, the act of walking, reaching, grasping, to something that was in its natural, unowned state. You've mixed your labor with that apple. Before you picked it, it was common. After you picked it, it became yours. It became your property. It's not that you asked for permission from humanity or from some governing body. It's not that you bought it. You simply acted upon it using your own effort. And that act of mixing your labor, according to Locke, is what immediately, automatically, and justly converts it from common property into your individual property. Think about how powerful that idea is. It's not about being granted property from above. It's about creating property from below through individual effort. This is how Locke posits that individuals can justly claim things from the state of nature. Your labor is the title deed, so to speak. Your effort is what marks it as yours. And this concept, this mixing of labor, is not just about picking an apple. It extends to anything you do to improve or transform something in nature. If you clear a field, plant seeds, cultivate crops, you're mixing your labor with the land, and the fruits of that labor become yours. If you quarry stone, cut down timber, fashion tools, you're taking raw materials from nature and, through your labor, making them into something new, something yours. This is the bedrock of Locke's theory of property. It starts with the absolute certainty of self-ownership, moves to the ownership of one's labor, and then demonstrates how that labor, when applied to the natural world, creates private property. It's a foundational argument for individual rights, for the idea that our ownership of things isn't just a social convention, but rooted in our very being and our fundamental human capacity to act and transform. It's a truly radical departure from previous ways of thinking about who owns what, and it sets the stage for so much more that Locke is going to explore in this incredibly influential chapter. We're just scratching the surface here, but what a surface to scratch. Chapter 6. From Acorns to Acres, the Origin of Property Rights. All right, welcome back to Locke Unlocked, the podcast where we dive deep into John Locke's second treatise of government and try to make sense of ideas that are still shaping our world today. I'm your host, and I'm really glad you're joining me for what I think is one of the most pivotal and, frankly, fascinating chapters in this entire book. Today, we're tackling Chapter 5, which I've titled From Acorns to Acres, the Origin of Property Rights. If you've ever wondered why we accept the idea of private property, why you own your phone or your house or even the shirt on your back, Locke's argument here is foundational. It's where he lays out his revolutionary theory of how individuals come to own anything in a world that, initially, was given to all mankind in common. So, let's set the scene. Locke starts with this premise that God gave the world to humanity in common. It's a shared inheritance. The earth and all its fruits are there for everyone to use and enjoy. But if it's all common, how does anyone get the right to say, this apple is asterisk mine asterisk, or this piece of land belongs to asterisk me asterisk? This is the big question Chapter 5 grapples with. Locke's answer is brilliant in its simplicity and profound in its implications, asterisk labor asterisk. He argues that every individual has a property in their own person. Your body, your mind, your efforts, these belong unequivocally to you. The labor of his body and the work of his hands, Locke says, are properly his. Now, here's the magic. When you take something from the common state and mix your labor with it, you essentially infuse it with a part of yourself. Let's say you're walking through a forest and you see an apple hanging on a tree. That apple is part of the common stock. But when you reach out, pick it, and put it in your basket, you've applied your labor. You've transformed it from something common into something personal. By doing that, you've made it your property. It's not about asking permission from everyone else in the world to take that apple. If you had to get universal consent for every single thing you needed to survive, you'd starve. No, Locke argues that this act of mixing labor is what removes something from the common state and appropriates it for individual use. Think about it. The same goes for tilling a piece of land. The land itself might be common, but when you spend your sweat and effort plowing it, planting seeds, and tending to the crops, you've invested yourself in it. You've made it yours through your labor. The deer you hunt, the fish you catch, they become your property because of your effort in acquiring them. It's a powerful idea, isn't it? It grounds ownership in individual effort and contribution. But Locke, being the thoughtful philosopher he is, doesn't just stop there. He immediately introduces some crucial natural limits on this acquisition of property. And these limits are absolutely essential for understanding his original vision of a just system of ownership. The first major limitation he introduces is what we call the spoilage limitation asterisk. This one is pretty straightforward and rooted in common sense. Locke argues that you can only appropriate as much as you can actually use asterisk before it spoils or goes to waste. The reason: God gave us the world for our benefit and enjoyment, not for us to waste. Wasting resources is, in Locke's view, an offense against natural law and against others. Think about our apple example again. You can pick a basket of apples. You can pick enough to feed your family for a week. But you cannot pick an entire orchard's worth of apples if you know you can't possibly eat them all before they rot. To do so would be to take something from the common stock that you have no intention or capacity to use, letting it go to waste, and thereby depriving others of their potential to use it. It's a use it or lose it kind of rule, if you will. The same goes for hunting an animal. You can hunt for food, but you can't kill 100 animals just for sport if their meat will simply rot. That's a transgression against the natural order and against the rights of others to utilize those resources for their own sustenance. This spoilage limitation is designed to prevent excessive accumulation and waste in a pre-monetary state of nature context. It keeps appropriation in check, ensuring that resources are distributed for actual use, not for hoarding or grand displays of possession. The second critical limitation, and one that is arguably even more central to Locke's vision of fairness, is the sufficiency limitation (SCRISC). This is often referred to as the enough and as good proviso. What it means is that when you appropriate something through your labor, you must leave enough and as good in common for others. This is a beautiful and often debated point in Locke's philosophy. It's a core principle that ensures that private appropriation doesn't disadvantage others. In the early state of nature, Locke argues this condition is easily met. Why? Because the world is vast, sparsely populated, and resources are abundant. There's plenty of land, plenty of water, plenty of wild game and fruits for everyone. So if you pick those apples, there are still plenty of other apple trees, or other fruits, or other forms of sustenance available for your neighbor. If you till a plot of land and make it your own, there are still vast tracts of equally fertile, if not better, land available for others to also apply their labor to and appropriate for themselves. Your appropriation doesn't make anyone else worse off. In fact, Locke suggests that by improving land through labor, you often make it more productive, and thus, in a sense, increase the common stock, not diminish it. An acre of cultivated land, he famously says, is worth more than an acre of wild, uncultivated land. So, individual effort actually enriches the world for everyone. These two limitations, spoilage and sufficiency, are absolutely crucial for understanding Locke's initial vision of property rights. Together, they create a foundation for what he sees as a just system of ownership in the state of nature. You can improve your condition through your labor, but you can't do so at the expense of others. You can't hoard resources to the point where they spoil, and you can't take so much that there isn't enough left for someone else to live equally well. It's a system where inequality, at least in its extreme forms, seems virtually impossible. Everyone has the opportunity to appropriate property through their own labor, and no one can accumulate so much that others are left destitute. It's a very egalitarian picture of early property, rooted in natural law and reason. It's about self-preservation and contributing to the common good by making the earth more productive, all while respecting the equal rights of others to do the same. Now, as you might imagine, these limits become incredibly interesting and complicated once we introduce money and civil society. What happens when money, which doesn't spoil, allows for the accumulation of wealth beyond immediate use? What happens when land is no longer abundant and the enough and as good proviso becomes harder to satisfy? These are the kinds of questions that Locke himself grapples with in later parts of this chapter, and that have been debated by philosophers and economists ever since. But for now, it's vital to appreciate this original, pristine Lockean vision of property arising from labor, bounded by the natural limits of spoilage and sufficiency. It's a powerful framework for thinking about what justifies ownership and what principles might underpin a truly just economic system. So, I hope this has given you a clearer picture of Locke's initial argument for property and these very important natural constraints. It's a starting point, a blueprint for understanding how individuals transition from a shared world to a world of individual possessions, all under the guiding hand of natural law. Next time, we're going to dive deeper into how this natural state of affairs begins to evolve, how money changes the game, and why Locke believes we eventually move out of this state of nature and into civil society to better protect these very rights. It gets even more compelling, trust me. Thanks for joining me on Locke Unlocked. Don't forget to check out the second treatise of government yourself if you haven't already. It's a journey worth taking. Until next time, keep thinking critically, and I'll talk to you soon. Chapter 7. The Money Revolution: How Gold Changed Everything. All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We are diving deep and I mean asterisk deep asterisk, into John Locke's asterisk second treatise of government asterisk. And today we're tackling chapter 7, a chapter that, in my opinion, completely redefines everything Locke has built up until this point. It's titled, rather grandly, The Money Revolution, How Gold Changed Everything. And honestly, it really did. So, if you remember from our last few episodes, Locke laid out this incredibly elegant system for acquiring property in the state of nature. You mix your labor with something, and it becomes yours. But there was this crucial, foundational limit, wasn't there? The spoilage limitation. You could only take as much as you could use before it spoiled. Remember the apples? You couldn't just hoard 1,000 apples if they were going to rot. That limit, that perfectly natural restriction, was supposed to prevent excessive accumulation and, by extension, massive inequality. It was an almost utopian concept, in a way. Everyone could have enough, but no one could have asterisk too much asterisk in a way that deprived others, because nature itself would step in and say, nope, that's enough for you. But here's the thing about human ingenuity, right? We're always looking for a workaround, always looking for a better way, a more efficient way. And Locke, being the astute observer of human nature that he was, understood this. He knew that this natural limitation, while logical, wouldn't hold forever. Enter the game-changer money. Now, when Locke talks about money, he's not talking about digital currency or even paper bills. He's thinking about things like gold and silver. And why these particular metals? Because they are durable goods. They don't spoil. You can dig up a chunk of gold today, bury it for 100 years, and it's still gold. It still holds its value. It doesn't rot like an apple, or go bad like a bushel of corn, or even wear out as quickly as tools or clothes. This is the absolute core of the money revolution. It's an invention that fundamentally bypasses the spoilage limitation. Think about it this way: in the old system, if you worked really hard and gathered more berries than you could eat, those extra berries were essentially useless. They'd spoil. You'd wasted your labor on the surplus. But what if you could exchange those extra berries, or your extra sheep, or your extra whatever, for something that asterisk wouldn't asterisk spoil? Something you could keep indefinitely? Something that represented that value, that labor, that productivity, in a durable form. That's what gold and silver became. They became a universal, durable store of value. Now, how did this happen? How did everyone agree that these shiny metals had value? Locke says it wasn't some grand council or a signed treaty. It wasn't a formal agreement at all. It was something far more organic, a tacit consent. People, through custom and practice, simply asterisk agreed asterisk to give these metals value. They saw their utility as a medium of exchange, a way to easily trade for other goods without the hassle of bartering perishable items. I mean, imagine trying to trade a cow for a handful of apples and then figuring out the exact value. Gold simplifies everything. You agree implicitly that this little chunk of gold is worth X amount of apples or Y amount of land. This tacit consent is absolutely crucial to Locke's argument, because if people asterisk voluntarily asterisk agree to use money, then they are also, by extension, voluntarily agreeing to the consequences of using money. And what are those consequences? The first, and perhaps most significant, is the accumulation of wealth beyond immediate need. Without the spoilage limitation, there's no natural cap on what you can possess. If you're industrious, if you work hard, if you find new ways to extract value from the earth or create goods, You can now convert all that surplus into something durable money. And you can keep that money. You can hoard it. You can accumulate vast quantities of it, far more than you could ever use in your lifetime. This, my friends, is where the seeds of inequality are truly sown, according to Locke. Before money, the maximum amount of property someone could have was naturally limited. After money, those limits evaporate. The person who works harder, or is smarter in trade, or is simply luckier, can accumulate far more wealth than others. And this isn't seen by Locke as a problem to be solved, at least not within this framework. He's not condemning it, he's describing a natural progression stemming from human rationality and the consensual adoption of a useful invention. Locke's justification for this emerging inequality is fascinating and for some modern readers, perhaps a little unsettling. He argues that this accumulation, made possible by money, is not unjust because it happens by the tacit consent of mankind. If we all agree that money has value and money allows for accumulation, then the resulting accumulation and the inequality it produces is implicitly agreed upon. Furthermore, he might argue, this system incentivizes productivity. It encourages people to make more, to innovate, because they can store the value of their labor. And that increased productivity ultimately benefits society as a whole, even if it creates disparities. More land is cultivated, more goods are produced, more trade occurs. It's a net positive in Locke's view, even with the unequal distribution of wealth that inevitably follows. So, here's the big question that Chapter 7 forces us to grapple with, and it's one that resonates through centuries. Is the invention of money a brilliant innovation that propelled humanity forward, allowing for the growth of complex societies, specialized labor, and increased productivity? Or is it, as many critics would argue, the very root of systemic inequality, exploitation, and the endless struggle over resources? Locke, I think, leans heavily towards brilliant innovation, a logical and perhaps even inevitable step in human development that, while leading to unequal possessions, isn't inherently unjust because it's based on consent. He sees it as enabling progress. But you and I, looking back through centuries of history, can see the profound and often painful consequences of that inequality. It's a paradox, isn't it? An invention that seemingly solved a natural problem simultaneously introduced a whole host of new, man-made problems. It's a moment in Locke's treatise where the pristine, almost idyllic state of nature, with its simple rules of property, gives way to a more complex, messier, and recognizably human world. A world where some have much and others have little, all sanctioned by the durability of a shiny metal and the unspoken agreement of humanity. This shift, this acceptance of massive inequality as a natural consequence of a consensual innovation, is going to be incredibly important as we move forward, because it's precisely this unequal distribution of wealth and power that will ultimately create the need for formal government, for laws, and for a system that can mediate disputes and protect property, even when that property is vastly unevenly distributed. So, chew on that for a bit. The revolution of money. A simple solution to a simple problem that completely upended the natural order. Next time, we'll see how Locke argues that this new, unequal world then demands a different kind of order, political society itself. Chapter 8, Family's Estate. Why Your Dad Isn't the King Alright? Welcome back to the podcast. We're diving headfirst into Chapter 8 of Locke's second treatise of government *, and trust me, This one is a game changer. It's titled Of Paternal Power, but honestly, a more fitting title might be Why Your Dad Isn't the King, or maybe Family vs. State, because what Locke does here is brilliantly unpack a distinction that was crucial in his time, and honestly, remains incredibly relevant today: the difference between the power a parent has over a child and the power a government has over its citizens. You see, up until this point, we've talked about the state of nature, property, the formation of political society through consent. But Locke knew he had to tackle a very persistent and, frankly, dangerous idea circulating in his era: the notion that a king's power was simply an extension of a father's power. This was a cornerstone of the divine right of kings theory, famously advocated by Robert Filmer, who argued that all political power ultimately derived from Adam's patriarchal authority over his family, passed down through generations to monarchs. It meant kings ruled by God's will, just like a father rules his household, and subjects owed them absolute obedience. Locke is essentially saying, hold on a minute, that's not how any of this works. So, let's break down paternal power first. Locke calls it paternal power, but he's quick to correct himself, pointing out it should really be parental power, acknowledging the mother's equal role. This power, he argues, is fundamentally natural. It springs from the act of procreation and the subsequent duty of parents to nurture, protect, and raise their children. Think about it. When a child is born, they are helpless. They lack reason, understanding, and the ability to care for themselves. The parents, driven by a natural instinct and moral obligation, provide that care. But here's the kicker: this power is temporary. It's not absolute or perpetual. Its purpose is singular: to bring the child to a state of maturity, to reason, to the point where they can understand the law of nature and govern themselves. As Locke puts it, the power then that parents have over their children is a temporary one, for when they come to be of age, they are then as free as their father himself. Once a child reaches maturity, once they can reason and are capable of acting as a free and rational individual, that parental power dissipates. It transforms from authority to respect, guidance, and affection, but not rule. My interpretation of this is that the best parents don't just rule, they guide their children to freedom not perpetual submission. This power isn't for the parents' benefit or to perpetuate their control, but for the child's development and eventual independence. Now, let's swing over to political power, and this is where the contrast becomes crystal clear. Political power, unlike paternal power, is not natural in the same sense. It doesn't arise from biology or dependency. Instead, it arises from the consent of free, equal, and rational adults. We've hammered this point home in previous chapters. Individuals, already possessing reason and liberty in the state of nature, agree to form a political society and subject themselves to a common set of laws and a shared government. And what's the aim of this political power? It's not about bringing individuals to maturity. They're already mature. It's about the preservation of their property, which, remember, for Locke, encompasses life, liberty, and estates, and ensuring the common good of the entire society. It's about providing a neutral judge and an impartial enforcement mechanism that's missing in the state of nature. This power is exercised by agents, the government, who are essentially trustees of the people, holding that power on their behalf and only so long as they act for the public good. So here's the big debunking, the why your dad isn't the king part. The divine right of kings theory fundamentally conflated these two distinct forms of power. It tried to argue that a king was like a father to his subjects, implying that subjects were like perpetual children, forever in need of paternalistic guidance and incapable of self-governance. Locke completely demolishes this. He says, the father's power over his children extends no farther than the ends of it, which is care, protection, education. It's about a duty to nurture dependency until independence. Political power, however, is about mutual agreement among already independent, rational adults. It's about choosing to unite for greater security and shared benefits, not about submitting to a superior because of inherent inferiority. To say a king rules by an extension of fatherhood is to say that all subjects are perpetual minors, lacking reason, perpetually dependent. This directly contradicts Locke's entire premise that individuals are born free, equal, and rational, capable of understanding the law of nature. Think about the implications. If political power were truly an extension of paternal power, then kings would have absolute, unquestionable authority, just as Filmer argued. But by meticulously distinguishing them, Locke places severe limits on political power. He shows that political rule is not a divine inheritance or a natural extension of family hierarchy. It's a pragmatic agreement, a trust established by free individuals for specific purposes, primarily the protection of their rights and the common good. This distinction is monumental. It's one of the keystones of Locke's entire political philosophy. It reinforces the idea that legitimate government derives its authority not from heaven or from some ancient patriarchal line, but from the consent of the governed. It elevates the individual's capacity for reason and self-governance, making them active participants in their own political destiny, not passive subjects under a divinely appointed father figure. So, the next time someone tries to tell you that a ruler has an inherent, natural right to absolute authority, or that subjects owe unquestioning obedience just because of a ruler's position, remember Locke's chapter 8. Remember that paternal power and political power are fundamentally different beasts, with different origins, different purposes, and different durations. Your dad might be the head of your household, but that doesn't make him the king of the country, and more importantly, the king of the country isn't your dad. It's a crucial lesson in understanding what makes power legitimate, accountable, and, ultimately, free. We've laid a very strong foundation here. Next time, we're going to dive into chapter 9, where Locke starts to wrap up his arguments on political society and really solidify the purpose of government. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next chapter. Chapter 9. The Social Contract, the Deal of a Lifetime. All right. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. So glad you could join me again as we dive deeper into Locke's second treatise of government *. We've been on quite a journey, haven't we? From the state of nature, where everyone is free and equal, to understanding the law of nature itself. But if you recall, last time we talked about the inconveniences of that state. Those moments where things just aren't quite ideal, even in a world of perfect freedom. Well, today we're hitting a really big one. This is the cornerstone, the bedrock of Locke's political philosophy, and honestly, of so much modern political thought. We're talking about chapter 9, which I've playfully titled The Social Contract, the Deal of a Lifetime, because truly it is. This is where we figure out how individuals move from that raw, untamed state of nature into civil society, into a government, into the world we largely recognize today. So, let's get right to it. What is this social contract? At its heart, it's a foundational agreement. It's an understanding, a pact that individuals make with each other. And here's the core of it. They agree to give up certain freedoms, and this is key, in exchange for something better. What freedoms specifically? Well, primarily, the freedom to be your own judge, jury, and executioner. The freedom to punish others directly when they infringe upon your rights as you see fit. You give that up to a central authority, to a government. And what do you get in return? Security. Protection of your property. Protection of your life and your liberty. It's a trade-off, plain and simple. Now, I want you to think about this as a totally rational exchange. It's not about giving up freedom because you're forced to, or because some tyrant demands it. No, this is about choosing a better life. In the state of nature, remember, you had the right to execute the law of nature. If someone stole your apple, you had the right to pursue them, judge their crime, and mete out justice. But what if you're weak? What if they're stronger? What if there's a dispute about what justice looks like? It's chaotic. It's uncertain. There's no impartial judge, no established, known law that everyone agrees upon, and no power to consistently enforce judgments. So the deal is, you give up that personal, potentially biased, and often ineffective right to execute the law of nature, and in return, you get impartial justice. You get a system where there are known laws, a neutral judge, and a collective power to enforce those decisions. It's a system designed to resolve those very inconveniences we talked about. And this leads me to another crucial point Locke makes. This is a voluntary agreement. Nobody is forced into this. It's not like you wake up one day and suddenly you're under a government without your consent. Locke argues that rational individuals, looking at the pros and cons of the state of nature versus civil society, would choose to enter this agreement. Why? Because the mutual benefits far outweigh the costs. You're trading a wild, uncertain freedom for a secure, predictable freedom. You're trading the constant threat of having your property seized or your life endangered by someone who disagrees with your interpretation of the law of nature for a system that actively works to protect those very things. It's for mutual benefit, for the betterment of everyone's lives, and to escape that constant state of fear and insecurity that could arise in the state of nature. You're opting for a common impartial rule of law. But here's where Locke is incredibly careful, and this is perhaps one of his most important contributions. When people enter this social contract, they absolutely do not surrender their fundamental natural rights. Let me say that again, because it's vital. Your rights to life, liberty, and property, those are inalienable. You don't give those up. What you surrender, what you delegate to the government, is the power to enforce those rights personally . It's a subtle but profound distinction. You still have the right to life, but now, instead of you personally chasing down someone who tries to take your life, the government steps in with its police force and legal system to protect that right. This distinction is what prevents the social contract from simply becoming a path to tyranny. If you surrendered your natural rights themselves, then the government could do whatever it wanted with your life, liberty, and property. But because those rights remain with you, the government's entire purpose is to protect them. If a government oversteps its bounds, if it begins to infringe upon your fundamental rights instead of protecting them, well, then it's breaking its end of the social contract. And that, my friends, has some pretty significant implications which Locke will explore in later chapters. But for now, understand this: the deal is not about giving up your inherent dignity or your fundamental freedoms. It's about making a strategic, collective choice to establish a system that better secures those very freedoms and that dignity for everyone involved. So, that's the social contract in a nutshell: a voluntary, rational agreement where individuals trade the right to personally enforce the law of nature for the greater security and impartial justice offered by a government, all while retaining their fundamental natural rights. It's quite literally the deal of a lifetime, shaping the very fabric of how societies are formed and how we understand the relationship between the individual and the state. It's foundational. Next time, we'll start looking at the structure of this new civil society, what this government looks like, and what happens when this deal goes sour. Until then, keep thinking about what you'd be willing to trade for greater security. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Chapter 10:1. For all the birth of a society, all right. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We're really getting into the thick of it now, diving headfirst into the mechanics of how society actually forms, according to John Locke. And today, we're tackling Chapter 10, which I've titled One for All the Birth of a Society. Because, truly, this chapter is where individual wills start to coalesce into something much bigger, something collective. So last time, we talked about individuals in the state of nature, recognizing its inconveniences and agreeing to give up some of their natural liberty to protect their property, life, liberty, and estates. That was the foundational social contract, that initial agreement to come together. But agreeing to come together is one thing, actually functioning as a united body is another entirely. And that's exactly what Chapter 10 grapples with. Locke explains that when men unite into a community, they form what he calls a commonwealth or a political society. Now, a commonwealth isn't just a bunch of people living in the same geographic area. It's a structured entity. It's born out of that initial compact, where each individual agrees to resign the power they had in the state of nature into the hands of the community. Think about it: in the state of nature, I*, was the judge, jury, and executioner for myself within the bounds of natural law. I had the power to punish transgressions against natural law. But when I enter society, I hand that power over. I say, okay, community, you handle it. And crucially, when individuals do this, they implicitly agree that this new community, this commonwealth, is now one single body politic. This is such a powerful metaphor, and honestly, one of the most crucial ideas in Locke. A body isn't just a collection of disconnected parts. A body moves and acts as a single, integrated unit. My arm doesn't just decide to go its own way. It moves because my brain, the central will, directs the whole body. So the big question Locke poses and then answers is, how does this new body politic actually move and act? If it's a single entity, it needs a single direction, a single impulse. And here's where we get to the absolute practical necessity of majority rule. Locke is very clear: when any number of men have so consented to make one community or government, they are thereby presently incorporated and make one body politic, wherein the majority have a right to act and conclude the rest. Think about why this is absolutely essential. If every single person had to agree on every single decision, society would be paralyzed. Imagine trying to get 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 people to agree unanimously on anything. It's an impossible dream, right? One person's dissenting opinion could halt everything. And if society can't act, if it can't move, then what was the point of leaving the state of nature in the first place? We wanted to escape the inconveniences, the uncertainty, the lack of a common judge. If society can't function as a judge, as a protector, then we're back to square one in a state of chaos. So, Locke argues that when you enter into this social contract, you are not just agreeing to be part of the group, you are implicitly agreeing to be bound by the will of the majority. You are submitting yourself to the decisions made by the greater number. It's the only practical way for the body politic to be a body politic and not just a fragmented collection of individuals. It's the only way for it to move in one direction, as he puts it. This doesn't mean your individual opinion ceases to exist, but rather that, for the purpose of societal action, your individual will, when it differs from the majority, gives way to the collective will expressed through that majority. The majority's decision becomes the act of the whole society. It becomes the public will. What I find so powerful about this chapter is how Locke stresses the transition from individual autonomy to collective action. He's not saying individuals lose their rights entirely, far from it. The whole point of society is to protect those rights. But he's explaining the practical mechanism by which a group of rights-bearing individuals can cohere and operate as a unified society. Without the principle of majority rule, this commonwealth, this political society, would immediately dissolve, like a boat with 100 captains, each trying to steer in a different direction. It would never get anywhere, and ultimately it would sink. So, to reiterate, Chapter 10 is all about explaining that once individuals enter into the social contract, they don't just form a loose association, they become a single coherent body politic. And for this body to move, to act, to fulfill its purpose of providing security and order, it must do so by the will of the majority. This is the practical engine that allows society to function, to have a collective will, and to act as that one for all entity that protects everyone who has joined it. It's the birth of a truly functioning society built on consent, but made practical through the power of the majority. Next time, we'll delve into the specific powers this new body politic actually possesses and how it goes about establishing a government. Stick around. Chapter 11, The Power of Yes Consent of the Governed 7.93 Chi T letter 1 EF1. All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. We've been on quite a journey through John Locke's second treatise of government peeling back the layers of his foundational ideas about human nature, property, and the very purpose of civil society. Today, we're hitting a truly crucial chapter, one that I personally find incredibly thought-provoking, especially when we consider our modern world. Chapter 11, which I've dubbed The Power of Yes Consent of the Governed. This chapter, friends, is where Locke truly lays out the cornerstone of what makes any government legitimate. It's not about divine right, it's not about brute force, it's not even primarily about tradition, although those things might play a role in how a government starts. For Locke, the only source of legitimate political power, The only way a government can justly rule over individuals is through their consent. It's the ultimate yes. Without it, any government is fundamentally tyrannical. Now, Locke, being the meticulous thinker he was, doesn't just throw out the word consent and leave it there. He carefully distinguishes between two critical types: express consent and tacit consent. And understanding the difference between these two is absolutely key to grasping his vision. Let's start with express consent. This is the more straightforward one. As the name suggests, express consent is an explicit, clear, undeniable declaration of your will to be a member of a society and to submit to its laws. Think of it as actively raising your hand and saying, "Yes, I agree to be governed by this community's rules." Locke's examples are often about someone joining a political society, perhaps by oath. In our contemporary context, this looks like an oath of citizenship. When someone goes through the naturalization process, they often take a solemn oath, publicly declaring their allegiance to a new country, its constitution, and its laws. They are explicitly renouncing former allegiances and making a clear, unmistakable commitment. Another example might be signing a declaration or an agreement to be part of a specific group that has its own set of governance rules. The clarity here is paramount. You can point to a specific moment, a specific action, a specific statement where someone actively said, "I consent." It's a very high bar, a very strong form of commitment, and for Locke, it binds you to that society for good, even making your descendants subject to it. But here's the thing: if only express consent counted, very few governments would ever be legitimate. Because let's be honest, how many of us have ever explicitly consented to our government? How many of us who were born into a particular country have actively stood up and sworn an oath of allegiance to it? Probably not many, if any. And Locke knew this. He recognized that societies need a broader, more practical mechanism for establishing consent. Otherwise, no stable government could possibly exist. And that brings us to tacit consent, the more subtle and in many ways more intriguing and controversial form of agreement. Tacit consent, as Locke explains it, is an implicit agreement to obey a society's laws simply by enjoying the benefits of living there. It's not an explicit declaration, but rather an unstated agreement inferred from your actions. If you're using the roads, benefiting from public services like schools or health care, enjoying the protection of the police and military, or even just quietly owning land within the territory of a government, Locke argues you are tacitly consenting to its authority. The core idea here is that if you're taking advantage of the protections and conveniences that a government provides, you are, by extension, agreeing to live by its rules and contribute to its upkeep. If you own property within a commonwealth, you're enjoying the legal framework that protects that property, therefore, you're consenting. If you merely travel freely through its territory, you're benefiting from its maintained infrastructure and security, and thus you're consenting. It's a very pragmatic approach to governance, acknowledging that societies can't function if everyone has to explicitly sign on the dotted line. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and honestly, a bit thorny, especially when we fast forward to our modern implications. Are we truly consenting to our governments today? This is a question I grapple with constantly. If we apply Locke's idea of tacit consent, then yes, most of us living in established nations are, by his definition, consenting. Every time I drive my car on a public road, every time I send an email that travels through public infrastructure, Every time I rely on the legal system to uphold a contract, I am implicitly assenting to the government's authority. The very act of not leaving, of continuing to enjoy the benefits, is taken as consent. But here's the rub, isn't it? How truly voluntary is that consent, if the only way to genuinely not consent is to leave the country, to emigrate, to find somewhere else to live, often leaving behind your family, your livelihood, your language, your culture? Is that a fair or even truly possible option for most people? For many, emigration is not a realistic choice. It's an enormous undertaking, fraught with immense personal and financial costs. So, if your only out is practically impossible, does your staying in still count as true consent, or is it simply resignation to the status quo? Locke's argument relies heavily on the idea that there's always an option to leave, a wilderness, a new unestablished land where you can go and form your own society or live freely. In his time, that might have been more plausible with vast, unsettled territories. Today, in a world of established nation-states, borders, and complex immigration laws, that option feels far less accessible, if not entirely illusory for many. So, while Locke's framework provides a brilliant and foundational argument for legitimate government based on consent, it also opens up this fascinating and somewhat unsettling question about the nature of our own implied agreement. Are we truly saying yes because we genuinely choose to, or because the alternative of saying no is simply too costly, too disruptive, or even impossible? This chapter forces us to look beyond the pomp and circumstance of government and ask, what is its fundamental legitimacy built upon? And for Locke, the answer is always the will of the governed. The power of yes, whether spoken out loud or simply implied by our daily lives, is what truly holds society together and makes government not just effective, but just. It's a concept that continues to echo through political philosophy and our daily lives, challenging us to constantly examine the relationship between the individual and the state. And that, my friends, is a conversation that never truly ends. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. Next time, we'll continue our exploration of Locke's ideas, moving into Chapter 12. The government's job description. All right, welcome back to Understanding Locke, the podcast where we dive deep into the enduring wisdom and sometimes the challenging ideas of John Locke's second treatise of government. We've been on quite a journey, haven't we? From the state of nature, through natural rights, and the fascinating concept of property. Now, we're about to hit a truly pivotal chapter, one that, for me, really pulls so many of Locke's foundational arguments together. We're moving into Chapter 12, which I've affectionately titled for our purposes, The Government's Job Description. And honestly, that's exactly what it is. If you've ever wondered, what is government actually for? What's its primary purpose? Then Locke has some very clear, very direct answers for you here. And they are, dare I say, revolutionary for his time and still incredibly relevant today. So, let's just cut straight to the chase with Locke's core argument in this chapter. Government, any government, is not an end in itself. I mean, think about that for a second. It's not about the power for power's sake. It's not about the individuals who hold the reins, and it's certainly not some divine, untouchable entity. No, government is, unequivocally, means to an end. It's a tool, it's an instrument, it's a structure created by people, for people, to achieve a very specific set of goals. And what is this ultimate end? What is this primary purpose, this overarching goal for which government is instituted? Locke couldn't be clearer. It is the preservation of the people's property. Now, before you think, oh, so it's all about land and money, let's just take a moment to reiterate Locke's expansive definition of property, because it's so much more than just your material possessions. For Locke, property in its broadest sense encompasses your life,
Liberty asks,
and your meaning your physical possessions, yes, but those are almost secondary to the first two. So, when Locke talks about the preservation of property, he's talking about the preservation of our very existence, our freedom to act within the bounds of the law of nature, and yes, our material goods that we've justly acquired. These are our fundamental rights, our birthright as human beings, which we brought with us from the state of nature. Remember those inconveniences of the state of nature we talked about: the lack of an established, known law, the lack of an impartial judge, the lack of a strong, unified executive power to enforce just decisions. Well, government is explicitly designed to fix those problems. It's the solution to those inconveniences. We enter into a political society, we consent to government, precisely because it offers a better, more secure way to protect our life, liberty, and estate than we could manage on our own, constantly looking over our shoulder, constantly having to be our own judge and executioner. So, the end of government is fundamentally about enabling a peaceful, safe, and publicly beneficial existence for its citizens. It's about creating an environment where individuals can enjoy their property, their life, their liberty, their estate without constant threat or uncertainty. It's about ensuring the public good. The whole point is to move from that uncertain, potentially dangerous state of nature to a society where these fundamental rights are recognized, protected, and arbitrated by a common, agreed-upon authority. Locke sees this as a profound trust. We, the people, entrust government with power, but that trust is conditional. It's not open-ended. It comes with a very specific mandate. And this brings us to the crucial implication of this chapter: any government action not directed at this end, at the preservation of life, liberty, and estate, at the peaceful, safe, and public good of the people, is by Locke's reasoning illegitimate. Let that sink in. Illegitimate. It's not just bad policy or a mistake. If a government, or any part of it, acts in a way that undermines the very reason it was created, if it threatens the lives of its citizens without just cause, curtails their legitimate liberties arbitrarily, or seizes their property without consent or due process, then it has fundamentally violated its job description. It has broken the terms of the trust that was placed in it. This is where Locke's ideas become truly powerful, truly the bedrock of modern liberal thought. He's essentially setting up a very clear boundary for governmental authority. Government exists for the people, not the other way around. Its power is derived from the consent of the governed, and that consent is given for a specific purpose: to better secure our natural rights. When government steps outside of that purpose, when it acts in ways that are detrimental to the public good or destructive of those fundamental properties, life, liberty, estate, it forfeits its right to rule. It ceases to be a legitimate government in the eyes of the people it's supposed to serve. It's a powerful argument for limited government, isn't it? It suggests that there are inherent boundaries to what a government can and cannot do. These boundaries aren't just practical, They are philosophical, rooted in the very nature of human beings and the social contract we enter into. It's not about imposing new rights, but about better protecting the existing natural rights that individuals possess. So Chapter 12, the government's job description, gives us this incredibly clear, concise statement of purpose. Government is a servant, not a master. Its mandate is narrow but profound to secure the life, liberty, and estate of its people, thereby fostering the public good. Any deviation from this mission, any act that goes against this foundational purpose, is a betrayal of trust and, ultimately, an illegitimate exercise of power. This understanding is absolutely essential as we move forward, because once we understand the purpose of government, we can then begin to understand the implications when government fails to live up to that purpose. And believe me, Locke has plenty to say about that too. But for now, I encourage you to ponder this chapter. How does Locke's job description for government resonate with your own understanding? Where do you see these principles at play, or perhaps absent, in the world today? It's a lot to think about, isn't it? Join me next time as we continue our exploration of Locke, because once we've defined the job, we need to talk about who holds the power to do it. Until then, keep thinking critically and keep asking those big questions. Thanks for listening. Chapter 13. The Rule Makers, the Legislative Branch. All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We're diving deep into John Locke's second treatise of government, and today we're hitting a really pivotal chapter, Chapter 13, titled Of the Subordination of the Powers of the Commonwealth. Now, that title might sound a bit dry, but trust me, what Locke unpacks here is absolutely foundational to how we understand modern government, especially the role of the legislative branch. I've titled our discussion today, The Rule Makers, the Legislative Branch, because that's exactly what we're going to explore. We've talked a lot about the state of nature, the social contract, how people come together to form a civil society. And in the last few chapters, Locke started outlining the general structure of government. But now, in Chapter 13, he really drills down into the nitty-gritty, particularly the power dynamic within that government. And the big takeaway here is that, for Locke, the legislative power is the supreme power of the government. Yes, supreme. And this is it's a supremacy that is still very much limited and ultimately accountable to the people. And I think that tension, that balance, is what makes this chapter so incredibly insightful. So, let's start with what the legislature does. Locke is crystal clear on this. The legislature's job is to create known, standing laws for everyone. Think about it. Remember those inconveniences of the state of nature? No established, known law to appeal to? Well, here's the solution. The legislative body steps in to provide that. These aren't temporary decrees issued on a whim for specific people. These are general rules, published, understood, and applicable to all members of society. It's about predictability, fairness, and ensuring that justice isn't a moving target. It means that whether you're a rich merchant or a humble farmer, the law applies equally to you. And that, to me, is incredibly powerful. It sets a baseline for a just society, demanding that government itself operate within a framework of rules, not just raw power. Now, I said that the legislative power is supreme, but also limited. And these limits are where Locke really shines, laying down safeguards against tyranny that are still incredibly relevant today. He outlines 4 key limits on the legislature, and these are non-negotiable for him. First, the legislature asterisk cannot be arbitrary asterisk. What does that mean? It means they can't just do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. Their power is not absolute. They are still bound by the law of nature, which, as we discussed early on, dictates that no one has the power to destroy, enslave, or impoverish others. So, even though the people have given up some of their individual power to the legislative, they haven't given it the power to act outside the fundamental principles of reason and justice. This is a direct shot at absolute monarchies, asserting that even the supreme power must operate within moral boundaries. Second, closely related, it asterisk must rule by promulgated, established laws asterisk. We just touched on this, but it's so important that Locke reiterates it as a fundamental limit. The government can't rule by sudden, arbitrary decrees or by applying different rules to different people. There needs to be a consistent framework of law that everyone understands and can anticipate. This prevents uncertainty, favoritism, and ensures that everyone is treated fairly under the law. It's about creating a stable, predictable society where people know what to expect from their government. Third, and this is a big one for Locke, it asterisk cannot take property without consent asterisk. Now remember, when Locke talks about property, he means not just land or possessions, but also our lives and our liberties. This is a cornerstone of his philosophy. People enter into society primarily to protect their property. Therefore, for the government to take any part of that property, especially through taxes, it must have the consent of the people, either directly or through their representatives. This is why representation is so crucial in Locke's view. It's the mechanism through which the people give their consent to be taxed. Without this consent, any taxation is essentially an act of theft by the government. And I think we can all agree that the idea of no taxation without representation echoes directly from this Lockean principle. It makes the government directly accountable to the citizens for how it handles their resources. Finally, the legislature asterisk cannot transfer its lawmaking power to anyone else asterisk. This is about the integrity of the trust. The people have entrusted asterisk this specific body asterisk with the power to make laws. They haven't given it the power to delegate that authority to, say, the executive branch or to some other unelected body. If the legislature could just hand off its lawmaking power, it would be betraying the original trust placed in it by the people. The people chose them, or their representatives, to be the rule makers, and that power cannot be pawned off or given away. It safeguards against an unaccountable shift in power dynamics within the government. So, when we put all these pieces together, what emerges is this profound idea: this power, this supreme legislative power, is fundamentally a asterisk trust asterisk given by the people. It's not an inherent right of any ruler or group of rulers. The legislature holds its power as a fiduciary trust, meaning it's a responsibility held on behalf of someone else, the people, and it must always be exercised for asterisk their asterisk good, for the preservation of society and its members. The people remain the ultimate sovereign. They are the ones who establish the legislative power, and they have the right to alter or remove it if that trust is violated. This is the seed, the foundational idea, that eventually leads to Locke's justification for revolution, but we'll get to that in later chapters. For now, it's crucial to understand that even the supreme power of the government is constantly under the watchful eye of the people, who are its true source. I find this incredibly compelling because it sets up a system where power, no matter how high, is never absolute and is always conditional. It's a powerful argument for limited government and for the ultimate sovereignty of the people. It's a reminder that those who govern are not masters, but servants of the public good. So, to recap, Chapter 13 firmly establishes the legislative power as the supreme power within the government, but immediately surrounds it with these critical limits. It must rule by known, standing laws. It cannot be arbitrary. It cannot take property without consent, and it cannot transfer its law-making power. All of this is underpinned by the understanding that this power is a sacred trust given by the people and is always accountable to them. Next time, we'll continue our journey into the structure of government, looking at the executive and federative powers. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you all soon. Chapter 14. The Enforcer's Executive and Federative Powers. All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. It's great to have you joining me again as we continue our journey through John Locke's incredibly influential Second Treatise of Government. Today, we're diving into Chapter 14, which Locke titles of prerogative, but honestly, a better way to think about this chapter and what we'll focus on today is the enforcers, specifically the executive and federative powers. You know, up until now, we've spent a lot of time talking about the legislative power, which Locke sees as the supreme power, the one that makes the laws. And rightly so, because that's where the general will of the people, the rules by which they consent to live, are created. But what good are laws if they're just words on paper, right? This is where Chapter 14 really kicks in and highlights the absolute necessity of powers that execute those laws. So, let's break down these two critical powers, the executive and the federative. First up, the executive power *. Now, this one is probably the easiest to grasp because it sounds a lot like what we understand as the executive branch in modern governments. Locke defines the executive power as the branch that is always in operation to execute the laws. And that always in operation part is key. Think about it, a legislative body might meet periodically. They might draft a new law, debate it, pass it, and then adjourn. But the laws they create, those need to be enforced 24/7 every single day. Imagine a speed limit sign. The legislative power decides it's 60 match on this road. But if there's no police force, no traffic courts, no one to actually stop you or fine you for speeding, then that law is pretty meaningless, isn't it? It just becomes a suggestion. So, the executive power is the one responsible for making sure those domestic laws, the rules that govern how people within the society interact with each other, are actually put into practice day in and day out. It's about the consistent, continuous application and enforcement of the law. I mean, without this constant vigilance, the whole social contract could crumble. What's the point of giving up some natural freedoms for the rule of law if those laws aren't upheld consistently? This is where Locke really emphasizes the need for a stable, always-on mechanism for enforcement. Now, let's move on to the second power, which is perhaps a bit less intuitive, but equally crucial, the federative power *. You can think of the federative power as the foreign policy branch of government. This is the power that deals with everything outside the community's borders. It's about war, peace, treaties, alliances, and basically managing all the interactions a nation has with other nations or independent communities. So, while the executive power is looking inward, making sure everyone within the society is playing by the rules, the federative power is looking outward. It's dealing with the state of nature that still exists between separate political communities. You know how Locke talks about individuals being in a state of nature until they form a society? Well, societies themselves are in a state of nature with each other. There's no overarching legislative power telling nations what to do. So, the federative power has to decide when to declare war, when to make peace, how to negotiate trade agreements, how to form alliances to protect the community's interests. It's about preserving the community's safety and well-being on the international stage. It's a huge responsibility, requiring a lot of judgment and often quick decisions, because international relations don't wait for a parliamentary session to convene. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and something Locke explicitly points out. He often sees these two powers, the executive and the federative, as being held by the same entity, the same person or group of people. Why is that? Well, Locke argues that both powers essentially rely on the public force of the community. Think about it. If you're enforcing domestic laws, you might need to use the police or the military. If you're going to war or signing a treaty, you're definitely engaging the military or the collective strength of the nation. He suggests it would be practically impossible, or at the very least, incredibly dangerous and inefficient, to have these two powers, the executive and the federative, in completely separate hands. Imagine if one person or body decided to declare war, the federative power, but a different person or body controlled the army and could refuse to deploy it for that war, the executive power. Or vice versa, if the domestic law enforcers decided they needed to intervene in a foreign conflict without the foreign policy branch's approval, it would lead to chaos, conflicting directives, and ultimately a weakened and vulnerable state. So, for Locke, even though these are conceptually distinct powers, the practical necessity of having a single, unified command over the community's strength, especially when it comes to the use of force, means they are almost always, and for good reason, combined in the same hands. It ensures consistency, coherence, and efficiency, which are vital for both domestic order and international security. This combination allows for a unified approach to protecting the community, whether the threat comes from within or from outside. It's a very pragmatic observation from Locke, demonstrating his understanding of how governments actually function, not just how they ideally should. So, in essence, Chapter 14 shows us that while the legislative power makes the rules, it's the executive power that ensures those rules are lived by daily within the community. And it's the federative power that navigates the complex, often dangerous waters of international relations. And for the sake of stability and effectiveness, these two enforcing powers are often intertwined. It's a foundational concept that really helps us understand the structure of many modern governments. All right, that's a wrap on the executive and federative powers. Next time, we'll delve deeper into the concept of prerogative, which is where Locke discusses the power to act without law, and sometimes even against the letter of the law, for the public good. It's a fascinating and sometimes controversial idea, so you won't want to miss it. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, keep thinking deeply about these ideas. Chapter 15, The Chains of Power, How to Limit Government. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. So, we've been on quite a journey with John Locke's second treatise of government delving into the very foundations of political society. We've talked about the state of nature, property, and why we even bother forming governments in the first place. But today, we're tackling something absolutely crucial, arguably the most impactful part of Locke's philosophy for the modern world, Chapter 15, The Chains of Power, How to Limit Government. This chapter, for me, really pulls everything together. It's where Locke says, okay, we've established why we have government. But now let's make sure it doesn't become the very thing it was created to protect us from. And the core idea here, which we've touched on before but really gets cemented now, is that government is fundamentally fiduciary trust. Think of it like this: you entrust someone with your money to manage it for your benefit, not theirs. If they betray that trust, if they start using your money for their own lavish lifestyle or making bad investments without your consent, you revoke their power. You fire them, right? Locke applies this exact same principle to government. We, the people, entrust power to our rulers. We loan them this authority. We don't surrender it absolutely. And that loan comes with very strict conditions. The moment that trust is broken, the power reverts back to us, the people, who are the ultimate source of authority. This idea is so radical and powerful even today because it flips the traditional view of sovereignty on its head. It's not the king or the parliament that's sovereign, it's the collective will of the people. So, what are these chains of power that Locke talks about? What are the strict limitations he places on all forms of government, whether it's a monarchy, an aristocracy, or a democracy? The first, and arguably most foundational limitation, is the rule of law. Government is not above the law. It's not a free-for-all where rulers can just do whatever they feel like on a whim. Locke is very clear: the legislative power, which is the supreme power within the government itself, must govern by established standing laws. These laws must be promulgated and known to the people and applied equally to all, rich or poor, favored or disfavored. This creates predictability, fairness, and crucially, it prevents arbitrary rule. It means you know what to expect, and you know that the government itself is bound by the same rules it imposes on you. For me, this is such a powerful safeguard against tyranny. Secondly, and this flows directly from our discussion on property, is the necessity of consent for taxation. Locke says that government cannot take any part of a man's property without his consent. And he means individual consent, either directly or through his representatives. This is where the famous rallying cry, "No taxation without representation," essentially originates. Your property isn't just your land or your money, it's your life and your liberty too. To take any of these without your permission is a fundamental violation of the social contract. It's a breach of that fiduciary trust. If the government can just seize your wealth whenever it wants, then what security do you have? What's the point of forming a society to protect your property if the protector itself can just take it? And the third major limitation, which underpins everything else, is that government must act only for the public good. Its sole purpose is the preservation of society and every person in it. It must protect the lives, liberties, and estates of the people. Any act by the government that is not directed towards this public good Any act that serves the private interests of the rulers or a select few is illegitimate. It's an abuse of power. It's another instance where the trust is broken and the power then reverts to the people. This is such a high bar, isn't it? It means every decision, every law, every policy must pass this ultimate test. Does it genuinely serve the well-being of all the people? Now, Locke also introduces a fascinating and somewhat thorny concept called
Prerogatives.
This is where things get a bit more nuanced. Prerogative is essentially the executive's power to act for the public good without a specific law, or even sometimes, and this is the controversial part, against an existing law, when rigid adherence to the law would be harmful to the public. Think of it like this: a sudden, unforeseen emergency, like an invasion or a natural disaster, requires immediate action. The legislature might not be in session, or the existing laws might not cover the specific circumstances. In such cases, the executive might need to make quick, decisive choices, even if they technically deviate from strict legal procedure, all for the ultimate safety and preservation of the community. Locke understood that in the real world, you can't have a law for every single eventuality. Sometimes, immediate action is necessary to prevent a greater harm. But here's the crucial caveat, and this is where the potential for abuse comes in. Who judges whether an act of prerogative was truly for the public good and not just a power grab? Who determines if the executive overstepped? Locke doesn't give a clear institutional answer to this. He essentially says that the people are the ultimate judge. If the executive consistently abuses this prerogative, consistently acts for selfish reasons rather than the common good, then the people have the right to resist and ultimately dissolve that government. This is the inherent tension, isn't it? Necessary flexibility versus potential tyranny. It highlights the constant balancing act required in governance. But even with prerogative, the overarching principle remains the executive's power. Even its discretionary power is still derived from the trust of the people and must ultimately serve the public good. It's not a license for absolute power, it's a constrained power subject to popular review. So when we synthesize all these arguments, what we see is Locke building an incredibly robust framework for limited government. Every branch, every official, every action is meant to be constrained. The rule of law ensures predictability and fairness. Consent for taxation protects property and autonomy. Acting solely for the public good defines the government's legitimate purpose. And even prerogative, while allowing necessary flexibility, is ultimately accountable to the people and the common good. It constantly reinforces this idea that the people are the ultimate sovereign. They are the ones who establish government, they are the ones who delegate power, and they are the ones who retain the right to reclaim that power if the government betrays its trust. Government is a servant, not a master. It's chained by its very purpose, by the laws it creates, and most importantly, by the consent and the will of the governed. This chapter, for me, is the true heart of Locke's revolutionary ideas. It lays the groundwork for constitutionalism, for bills of rights, and for the very concept of popular sovereignty that defines so many modern democratic nations. It's a powerful reminder that power, no matter how necessary, must always be viewed with suspicion and held to the strictest account. It's a reminder that we, the people, are not passive subjects, but active participants, holding the ultimate authority. And that, my friends, is a pretty powerful thought to leave you with for today. Join me next time as we dive even deeper into Locke's thought. Chapter 16, Mightivis. Write the problem of conquest. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. We're continuing our journey through John Locke's second treatise of government and today we're diving into chapter 16 of conquest. Now, if the previous chapters felt like a bit of a theoretical deep dive, chapter 16 feels incredibly relevant, even urgent, in our world today. Locke here tackles a question that has plagued humanity since the dawn of organized societies. Can conquest ever establish legitimate political authority? Or, to put it more simply, does might make right? And Locke's answer unequivocally is no. It's a powerful, radical assertion that flies in the face of centuries of historical precedent where empires were built and rulers justified their power purely through the force of arms. Let's get right into it. The core of Locke's argument in chapter 16 is this: conquest by an unjust aggressor can never establish legitimate political authority over the conquered. Let that sink in. This isn't just a philosophical musing, it's a direct challenge to any regime that claims power purely because it won a war. Locke starts by making a crucial distinction. He asserts that an aggressor in an unjust war has absolutely no right over the conquered population. Think about it this way: if I break into your house, steal your belongings, and then, because I've successfully overpowered you, declare myself the new owner of your house and demand your obedience, would that be legitimate? Of course not. Locke sees an unjust aggressor in a war in much the same light. The act of aggression, the very waging of an unjust war, is a crime. And a criminal act, Locke argues, cannot generate a right. It can't create a legitimate title to anything, certainly not to political power over others. He says the aggressor, by initiating an unjust war, essentially puts themselves into a state of war with those they attack. They are no different from a common criminal or a pirate. And just as a pirate who captures a ship doesn't gain legitimate ownership of that ship or authority over its crew, an unjust conqueror gains no legitimate authority over the people they've subjugated by force. Their power is merely physical might, pure brute force, not rightful authority. It's a temporary submission enforced by fear, not an obligation born of consent or justice. This is such a fundamental point for Locke. If you start a fight you have no right to start, and you win, you still haven't earned any right to rule. You're still in the wrong. Now, Locke is also realistic. He understands that wars do happen and sometimes wars can be just. So, he moves on to address the scenario of a war. Let's say a nation is attacked, or its rights are violated, and it justly defends itself or seeks to recover what was taken. Even in such a case, where the conqueror is on the side of right, Locke argues that their power is severely limited and does not extend universally to the innocent or their property. This is a crucial nuance that often gets overlooked in discussions of conquest. First, who exactly does the conqueror gain power over in a just war? Locke is very clear: only those who actually engaged in the unjust aggression. This means the combatants, the people who actively waged war against the just side. The conqueror has a right to demand reparations for damages suffered and, in extreme cases, even to take the lives of those who unjustly attack them. But that's where it largely ends. The power gained by the just conqueror does not extend to the innocent. And by innocent, Locke means anyone who did not participate in the unjust war. This includes women, children, non-combatant civilians, and even soldiers who were forced to fight against their will. These innocent people retain all their natural rights, their right to life, their liberty, and crucially, their property. A just conqueror cannot legitimately seize the land, goods, or freedom of innocent people. They cannot enslave them. Locke even extends this to the descendants of the aggressors, arguing that children don't inherit the guilt of their fathers. So, hereditary slavery based on conquest is entirely illegitimate in Locke's view. Think about the implications of this. It's a huge restriction on the traditional spoils of war. No mass confiscation of land, no enslavement of entire populations, no arbitrary imposition of rule over everyone simply because your army won. The just conqueror, for Locke, essentially has the right to enforce justice and demand reparations from the actual wrongdoers, but not to subjugate an entire society. The conqueror must distinguish between the guilty and the innocent. This, again, is incredibly radical for its time, challenging the norms of empire building. It means that even if your cause is just, victory doesn't give you a blank check to do whatever you want. So, if neither unjust conquest nor even just conquest grants a conqueror absolute power, where does legitimate power come from? This brings us to Locke's ultimate conclusion, which ties back to everything we've discussed in previous chapters. Political power can only arise from the consent of the governed, not from force. Conquest, no matter how successful, can only establish a relationship of force and submission. It can compel obedience through fear and the threat of violence, but it cannot create a moral or legitimate obligation to obey. A people living under the rule of a conqueror, whether just or unjust, are not truly subject to political authority unless they have given their consent to that authority. Their agreement, their willingness to be governed, is the indispensable ingredient. Locke would argue that even if a people are utterly defeated and disarmed, they retain their fundamental natural rights and the right to constitute their own government. They are not bound by any agreement or submission made under duress. A conqueror might seize their lands, take their goods, or even kill them, but they can never genuinely acquire legitimate political power over them without their free consent. It's the difference between being held captive and choosing to be part of a community. This is the bedrock principle of Locke's entire philosophy of government. Government exists to protect natural rights, and its legitimacy flows from the people's decision to entrust that power to rulers for their own good. Force, by its very nature, is the antithesis of this free consent. It's a powerful and enduring message: might does not make right. Power imposed by force alone is tyranny, no matter how successful the military campaign. True political authority always rests on the foundation of the people's consent. It's a principle that continues to resonate, shaping our understanding of international law, self-determination, and the very concept of legitimate governance. It means that no nation has an inherent right to rule over another simply because it possesses greater military might. It's a profoundly hopeful message about the enduring power of human rights and the sovereignty of the individual, even in the face of overwhelming force. Thank you for joining me for this deep dive into Locke's Chapter 16. It's a heavy but incredibly important topic. Next time, we'll be moving on to Chapter 17, where Locke explores, well, you'll have to tune in to find out. Until then, keep thinking critically, and I'll talk to you soon. Chapter 17, When a Ruler Becomes a Criminal on Tyranny. All right, welcome back everyone to Locked In, where we're continuing our deep dive into John Locke's second treatise of government asterisk. Today we're tackling chapter 17, and believe me, this one is a heavyweight. It's titled of usurpation and tyranny, but we're really going to zone in on the tyranny part, a topic that, frankly, feels incredibly relevant even centuries after Locke wrote these words. This chapter is where Locke really sharpens his knife, so to speak, against the abuse of power. He's not just talking about kings anymore, he's laying out a universal principle that applies to anyone in authority. And the core idea here, the absolute bedrock of this chapter, is that tyranny is the asterisk exercise of power beyond right asterisk. Let me say that again. It's when a ruler uses their authority for their asterisk own private advantage asterisk, not for the asterisk public good asterisk. Now, that might sound straightforward, but let's unpack it. What does power beyond right really mean? For Locke, it means exceeding the authority granted by the law, and more fundamentally, exceeding the trust placed in them by the people. Remember, in Locke's view, government is formed by consent to protect our natural rights, life, liberty, and property. When a ruler deviates from that purpose, when they start using their position to enrich themselves, to settle personal scores, or to simply impose their arbitrary will, they are no longer governing. They are, in Locke's stark terms, acting as a criminal. And this leads us to one of the most quotable, and frankly, most chilling lines in the entire treatise asterisk, where law ends, tyranny begins. Think about that for a moment. It's not just about breaking a specific law, although that's certainly part of it. It's about operating outside the framework of law itself. It's about a ruler deciding that their will, their personal decree, is superior to the established legal system that is supposed to bind everyone including themselves. When a ruler does this, they cease to be a magistrate and become an oppressor. They are no longer a part of the social contract, they are actively working against it. It's like having a referee in a game who suddenly decides they're not going to follow the rules anymore, and instead, they're just going to make up calls that benefit them personally. The game at that point isn't a game anymore, it's a farce. And more dangerously, it's an attack on the very concept of fairness and justice that allows us to coexist. What I find fascinating about Locke's definition is how broad it is. He's incredibly clear that tyranny isn't exclusive to absolute monarchs or emperors with grand titles. He explicitly states that anyone in power can be a tyrant. A king, yes, absolutely. But also a constable, a local magistrate, a judge, even a government minister. If any of these individuals, acting under the guise of their official capacity, abuse their power and act outside the bounds of the law for their private advantage, they are, by Locke's definition, tyrants. This really democratizes the concept of tyranny in a way. It's not some abstract evil residing only in distant palaces. It's a potential corruption that can manifest at any level of government, wherever trust is placed and then betrayed. It brings the discussion right down to the everyday interactions citizens might have with authority. If a police officer abuses their power, if a local councilor makes decisions solely for personal gain, if a tax collector demands more than is legally due, these are all instances where, in Locke's framework, the seeds of tyranny are sown, or even flourishing. It's about the action not just the position . Now, here's where things get really intense and where Locke puts forward an idea that was, for his time, revolutionary and still sparks debate today. If a ruler becomes a tyrant, if they operate outside the law and against the public good, then the people have a right, indeed a duty, to resist them. And Locke doesn't mince words here. He argues that people have a right to resist a tyrant asterisk, just as they would resist any other criminal asterisk. Think about the implications of that. If someone breaks into your house to steal your property or threaten your life, you have a natural right to defend yourself, even with force. Locke extends this logic directly to the ruler who acts tyrannically. Such a ruler is no longer a legitimate authority. They are an aggressor, an enemy of the Commonwealth, no different from a common thief or murderer. They have, by their own actions, placed themselves in a state of war with the people. This is a profoundly powerful assertion. It's not about advocating for anarchy or constant rebellion. Locke is always careful to explain that people are not prone to rebel for light and transient causes. We're creatures of habit. We'd much rather stick with the devil we know than jump into the unknown chaos of revolution. But what he is saying is that when the abuses are prolonged, systematic, and clearly demonstrate a design against the people's liberties and property, then the natural right of self-preservation kicks in. The people are justified in using force to remove a ruler who has, by their own actions, forfeited their right to rule. It's a moral and political justification for revolution, but specifically a revolution against tyranny against the abuse of power, not against legitimate authority. It's about restoring the rightful order, bringing the ruler back under the law, or if that's impossible, replacing them with someone who will respect the law and govern for the public good. So, in essence, Chapter 17 is Locke's definitive statement on what happens when a government, or any part of it, crosses the line. It defines tyranny not just as bad governance, but as a fundamental breach of trust and a violation of the very purpose of government. It then empowers the people with the ultimate right to defend themselves against such aggression, treating the tyrannical ruler not as a sacred sovereign, but as a common criminal. It's a powerful, sobering chapter that reminds us of the constant vigilance required to maintain liberty and the profound responsibility that comes with wielding power. It pushes us to ask, are those in authority acting within their rights? Are they serving the public good or their private advantage? And what happens when they cease to do the former and begin doing the latter? These are questions that resonate deeply, and I think they offer invaluable insight into why Locke's ideas continue to be so foundational to our understanding of constitutional government and the rights of the governed. Join me next time as we explore Chapter 18, where Locke delves into usurpation, another fascinating aspect of illegitimate power. Thanks for tuning in to Locked In. I'll talk to you soon.